Today I'm going to be reacting to Mr. Ballin, and this one's going to be about some missing people, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, we're going to be reacting to it. And of course, if you want to watch it without me yapping, go ahead, check out his channel down below in the description with that. Let's get to watching. Starlight, star bright.
On the afternoon of April 10th, 1998, a 40-year-old woman named Diane Auget stood at a bar inside the Hayloft Tavern in the small town of Hudson, Florida. Diane grabbed her glass off the bar and downed the last few sips of her drink, and even though by this point her vision was blurry and she actually felt sick to her stomach, she still yelled out to the bartender in a very slurred voice and told him to bring her another round. And the reason for this is because Diane actively wanted to get so drunk that she could just forget everything. Because at the moment, her life was kind of a disaster. So Diane used to be a married, stay-at-home mother with 3 kids that she loved so much, but about 10 years ago, she'd begun having some very serious mental health problems, and she'd ultimately been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She would fall into these deep depressions that would make it almost impossible to function.
Yeah,
and then she would swing and have these manic episodes that would literally keep her up for days on end and left her so delirious that she would start talking to herself. Eventually, Diane's husband divorced her, and he got custody of their kids. Now, Diane's life had sort of leveled off. She was living with her sister, so she had some level of support.
Are there like meds she can take though?
But her bipolar disorder really was not under control, in part because she had medication for it, but didn't always take it. And so she would swing in and out of mania and deep depressions all over again. And as a result of this, she had consistently been in and out of various psychiatric facilities multiple times. So on this particular night, Diane really just wanted to drown her sorrows. And so a couple of hours earlier, she had left her sister's house and walked to this bar because she didn't have a car. And she'd been standing around at this bar, basically pacing in circles and drinking alone ever since. Just then, the bartender came over. And even though Diane was seeing double, she immediately saw that he did not have another round in his hand. He had no more alcohol. The bartender gave Diane a look that was half annoyed and half sympathetic. And he told her he was cutting her off. And Diane was so mad. She began telling him that he didn't know what he was talking about, that this was humiliating, but he just put his hands up and said, "No, I'm sorry, you're cut off." And so
they kind of have to do that.
Angrily, Diane turned and sort of stumbled out of the bar and began walking down the street. The next day, so April 11th, Diane's mother, Mildred, paced back and forth inside of her living room, holding a phone to her ear. It rang a couple of times, and then a dispatcher from the local police department picked up. At which point, Mildred told them in a shaky voice that she needed to report her daughter, Diane, missing. So a little while earlier, Mildred's other daughter, Diane's sister, the one that Diane lived with, had called to tell her that Diane had left the house the night before without telling her where she was going and still had not come home yet. And of course, based on Diane's history of mental illness and pretty erratic behavior, Mildred immediately felt like, oh my gosh, my daughter must be in trouble. So now, on the phone with police dispatch, Mildred explained the whole situation. She said that yes, it was possible that her daughter, Diane, had left and gone somewhere for some actual real purpose, but it was also entirely possible that she was having a manic episode and might have, in her mania, wandered off and gotten lost. The dispatcher said that she would send officers to interview Mildred and her other daughter, and they would start looking for Diane right away. But 4 days later, on April 15th, there was still no sign of Diane. That afternoon, Diane's mother...
Well, that's a bad sign, because it was I think it's after 72 hours or something, the odds of finding the person alive is almost nil. Something to that effect. So that is horrible. Oh, God.
Mildred checked in at the police station like she had been every day since her daughter first went missing. But, just like always, the police didn't have any new information for her. So far, all they knew was on April 10th, the night Diane had left her sister's house without saying where she was going, they had figured out she had gone to the Hayloft Tavern and gotten so unbelievably drunk that the bartender had cut her off. And then at that point, she had walked out of the bar, and that was the last the bartender saw her. The following day, on April 11th,
where the fuck she went.
Diane had been sighted walking along Highway 19, which was just a couple of miles away from that tavern.
Really?
And then she'd also been spotted near a locally owned motel right off the highway called the Coral Sands Motel. But after that, the police said they had no idea what happened to Diane, where she could have gone, or what could have happened to her. And so ultimately, Mildred left the police station feeling very disappointed and also scared. I mean, the whole drive back to her home, she felt absolutely sick with worry.
Yeah.
She had no idea if her daughter was hiding somewhere on purpose, or if she'd gotten lost and was now injured, or maybe she was hungry, or if she'd maybe run into the wrong person and potentially been kidnapped or worse.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these terrible scenarios playing out in her head. Finally, Mildred got back home.
And then the fact that like the mother can't literally do anything except for wait, right? That's the worst part. She can't do anything.
And
That's
she went
awful.
inside and she sat down on her couch and just tried to think about, what else she could do to find her daughter. And that's when she noticed she had a new voicemail on her answering machine. Mildred thought, maybe her other daughter had called while she was out and that was the voicemail. Or maybe it's something to do with Diane. But either way, she got up, she walked over, and she hit play. And what she heard made her feel sick to her stomach. What she heard was Diane's voice. And Diane sounded terrified.
Oh no.
And she kept saying, "Help, let me out." Then
Poor
there was
girl.
sort of a scuffling sound on the recording, like somebody had grabbed the phone out of Diane's hand. And then Diane said something like, "Hey, give me that." And then the call just cut off. And so after hearing this, Mildred
someone
obviously
took
went
her.
into a total panic. It's like, oh my gosh, all of the worst things that could have happened to my daughter must be happening. And so
Yeah.
now, even though Mildred was completely upset, she's shaking with anxiety and fear, she
Like, I'll never understand why, like, anyone would want to, like, kidnap someone in general, but especially someone who's, like, so fucking drunk. They can barely, like, understand where they even are. Like, that's so disgusting and, like, disturbing, Like, they're not even real humans. They're just, like, demons.
grabbed the answering machine and looked for the caller ID to see, who left this message. But all it said was the call had come in from somewhere called Starlight, which didn't mean anything to Mildred. But she quickly, dialed this number back, hoping, whoever it was would pick up, but nobody answered. And so after that, Mildred called the police. This voicemail made it obvious to police that Diane had not left on purpose and she was not lost. It sounded like, at least based on this voicemail, that she had been kidnapped
Yeah.
and was likely being held against her will. But as for where Diane was being held, the police had no idea. They couldn't trace the call to her specific location, and they couldn't figure out what this Starlight thing was either. So for another full day or so,
Oh no.
the investigation, despite this new lead, basically floundered. There wasn't much to go on. That is until the next afternoon, on April 16th, so 5 days after Diane disappeared. On that day, the police got a call from a man who said he had just been walking along the side of Highway 19 and he had found something disturbing. He said he wasn't sure if the object was even real, but he thought, for sure the police should probably come check it out just in case. And so police immediately rushed out to the scene. They found this object, they sent it off for testing, and then they waited. And when the analysis came back, they learned two things. Number one, the object was definitely real. And number two, it belonged to Diane Auget. The
Oh,
object
shit,
was
what?
the severed tip of a finger from her right hand. Over the next few years, people kept calling in sightings of
Ooh,
Diane
what the
Auget to
fuck?
the police in Florida. And the police would look into it, and they would interview more than 100 people.
Why was her finger
Nothing
chopped
ever
off?
panned
What the
out.
hell?
The police never figured out what Starlight was, which is where that voicemail had originated from that was left
Yeah, what
on
is
her
that?
mother's voicemail. And the police also never determined how or why Diane's finger was cut off. But despite all that, strange clues that definitely were tied to Diane kept turning up in some very strange places. Like, for example, the manager
I mean,
of
it
a
has to be on
convenience
purpose
store
though, right?
near where Diane lived found a bag of Diane's neatly folded clothing inside of their store's outdoor freezer. And a customer at a different nearby convenience store found a plastic bag full of toiletries, including eyeliner and perfume and lipstick, that was left behind on a countertop. And on it was scrawled the name Diane. But police were never able to figure out who placed the bag or why. And so
It's
unfortunately,
definitely on purpose, but for
today,
why?
Diane's case remains unsolved.
Damn. It's still unsolved, so like, oh, well, this was down in 1998, so I guess now she wouldn't be alive today, I guess. But God, how fucking terrifying though, cause what is Starlight? I mean, Starlight has to be a place somewhere, obviously, and it obviously has to be somewhere in that vicinity of where she got picked up and they live, because all of her things keep popping up in random spots, and they are there deliberately, right? Like the person who like cut off her finger and like, you know, put things in bags and shit and have her name on it in certain places is deliberately putting it there so people can see and know that, oh yeah, I still have her, but you're never gonna find her. Like, how fucking disgusting is that? But I feel like it's someone she knows. Like my gut is telling me that whoever took her and kidnapped her is someone she knows, and they know she has a mental issue, right? And it's just so easy for them to like keep her and probably, you know, do horrible, horrific stuff to her. We don't know, but now they're just playing with her family and everyone else around the city and the state. That's my gut feeling, but yeah. So this was back in 98. I don't think they're alive anymore, unfortunately. And if they aren't, I hope, you know, Diane and Mildred, you know, are resting in peace up in heaven and stuff. And, you know, they're finally together after, you know, all those horrific bullshit. But good Lord, like if someone's so fucking drunk, get them a fucking Uber or something, you know? Like don't try and like steal someone. Like don't be a disgusting monster. It's not that hard. But either way, all right, that was the case of the missing Diane. Let me know down in the comments what you think of her disappearance below. Do you have any takeaways from it that I don't, I guess? I don't know. But anyway, with that, hopefully you all enjoyed this video. And with that, like it, dislike it, but at least subscribe.